Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today as we do our first partner webinar with OpenSesame. Today, we're going to be covering really what the cloud first skills challenge that we're seeing in tech and IT, and the challenges of getting that kind of group of people up to speed and ready with the latest information when technology is changing so quickly. So today we have our main presenters are Mark Schuster and Kyle Ghilardi, who is a technology specialist from OpenSesame. Some of you might already know Mark Schuster, who's our product manager here at CYPHER. And of course, Mark also has an incredible background in leading learning and training. What we're going to cover today is just basically why it matters, what's changing, what's happening in the marketplace, and how you can create a prepared IT workforce and some of those barriers to IT development that you need to overcome, followed up by some tips for how to engage them and some ways that your LMS can help. So an LMS like CYPHER, how to make it easy, how you can learn to trust your learning ecosystem to bring people on board. And OpenSesame, our partners at OpenSesame have created a fantastic cloud-first action plan. This course, thanks to again to our partners at OpenSesame, is pre-approved for some credits from ATD, SHRM, and HRCI. So at the end of this webinar, stay tuned. You'll be able to see the QR codes so that you can grab those certifications. Our speakers today, like I mentioned, Mark Schuster, Head of Product for CYPHER Learning, and Kyle Ghilardi, Head of Technology Curation Specialist. But unlike our other Pro Tips webinar, this one is going to be hosted by Liza Weisner from OpenSesame. She is Head of Workplace and Culture there, and she is going to be leading the session today and guiding you through everything. So with that, I'm going to pass it over and let them kick it off for us.
So we're going to start off with a poll so we can get to know y'all just a little bit better. So the question on the poll that you should have seen just pop up on your screen is, what's the biggest challenge your organization faces with tech training today? Now take a moment to review the options. I'm going to ask Mark or Kyle. Kyle, what would you say the option for you would be?
I would say it's probably the lack of personalized or role-based learning paths, where technical teams really want to make sure that the thing that they're spending their time on is exactly what they need and want.
Making it relevant. So some of y'all who picked, you're struggling to make it relevant. That's important. What about you, Mark?
Well, I'd like to say we're doing great with no challenges, but that would be a lie. So I won't say that. Uh, I think right now, what I see a lot is low engagement and completion rates. And so much of that comes down to the prioritization and being able to know what you're going into versus being overwhelmed by a sea of courses and not being able to make those choices.
Okay. I love hearing that. So let's go ahead and see the results. So we are so happy to see these results. You all have chimed in, and it looks like we're sort of split. We're looking at the biggest challenges being rapidly evolving technologies outpacing current training. Right? The world is moving so fast. A lack of personalization or role-based learning paths, exactly what you said, Kyle, and low engagement or completion rates in existing programs. Mark, they got you there as well. So it looks like we have a split room today. And so for our I guess we're going to tee it up by actually diving into one of the poll questions, which is really about how the world is changing today. And Kyle, I know we have chatted about this a lot, right? We've chatted about how the world is not as we expect it to be, just smooth sailing along. Things have really changed. Tell us more about it.
Absolutely. I mean, the things that are going on day in and day out, what you feel like you know something today, 6 months, it's totally different. Clearly AI is one of those topics that comes to mind in that regard. But, as someone who builds AI learning paths every day, we've already had to shift that around pretty substantially. But I really feel like these trends illustrate that organizations must become agile in learning and skill development. It's really no longer just a competitive advantage; it's becoming essential for business survival and growth. So yeah, it's kind of nuts. I mean, which of these trends are you hearing most about from your customers, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we hear a lot about AI, and it's the buzzword of the industry this year, and that's one of the areas that we've done a lot of focus on at CYPHER Learning. But I also see a lot of focus on digital transformation demands and the ability just to keep up as the technology changes, and knowing that the workforce has the skills that are necessary as the different platforms evolve.
It's so true. Yeah, I mean, I see that around like the topic DevOps. That requires not only a technical skills training, but also a shift in organizational culture, collaboration, and agility. When I'm fielding curation requests from our customers every day, it's always I need these technical skills, but we also need agile, Scrum, we need project management, we need Kanban boards. Like we have to figure out the best way to go through the whole shift and how we build stuff and do things.
That's right. Kyle, we know that these are not just headlines, right? This isn't just for fun. These are some real business impact implications. And I think, one of the most important things for me is just thinking through how can a company have a growth engine. Tell us more about what data you have found to support this cause.
Yeah, I mean, the data that's out there is really showing that there's a big opportunity to do something different here, right? And I think that the way that this is averaged out, it's not just the data. I mean, we're really feeling this out there too. And it's kind of wild. I mean, I would say that, together, Mark, like you and like our companies, we're really positioned to help customers address these alarming skill gaps quickly. And I was just wondering, like, to shed a little light on it from your side, can you talk a little bit about how customers leverage CYPHER's LMS to measure the impact of our content, Open Sesame's training content on their workforce? Like, what are you guys seeing over there?
Sure. And particularly over the last couple of years, there's been so much talk about skills and how that is measured and managed. And that's one of the areas that we see a lot of focus on with this type of content as we look at the skills that go along with the technical training and all of those massive changes as we look at cybersecurity and DevOps and these sorts of things. So what we see a lot of is the use of our skills and mastery functionality that gives a good dashboard to leadership to be able to see these are the strength areas for my team, these are the weakness areas, and being able to then have recommendations made automatically for course content that ties into a particular technology or particular mindset, like an agile methodology, and get those employees upskilled very quickly and have that easy visual way to take a look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always think about some of the stories that I hear out there, in the day to day, as we're curating content for customers and helping them with the situations that they face. And like just last week, I wanted to share a story that came up. There was a company that reached out, a larger enterprise company, of a customer of ours, and they had an IT administrator misconfigure a cloud storage bucket. It was an AWS S3 bucket, and they ended up leaving it publicly accessible. It seems kind of silly, but it's actually easier to do than you might imagine. But due to the lack of understanding about default permission settings and a failure to follow a change management checklist, that bucket got exposed, and it did have some sensitive HR information. And due to bots that are continually scanning out there, the simple thing, became a remediation incident that I ended up curating content for. So I was just curious, like, have you heard any interesting stories out there? Like, what are some of the typical things, or do you have an example to share?
Yeah, particularly as we look at a lot of the social types of scams that occur. A large health system that I worked with had a very similar type of challenge with being able to access the deposit information for their payments for their healthcare workers. And a lot of it came down to a lack of understanding on the part of their help desk team on how to properly validate and recognize scams as they were occurring. So a scammer was able to impersonate one of their senior executives and change the routing numbers for all of their payments that were going to the hospital. So that starts to get into a lot of money very quickly. Since it was electronic, they were able to claw back so much of the funds, but that impact was just dramatic for them. And having to go into a remediation program of training and get through all of that and not have that money while the FBI was working on it was a huge impact to the health system.
Oh, yeah, there's a seriously genuine risk that our companies are facing out there, and they just have to stay on top of these things. It's not a luxury, it's a must.
It is a must. And when I see this 90% of companies will face an IT skills crisis by 2026, it means that I feel like nobody is safe, right? You know, the cost of doing nothing is these data breaches y'all are talking about, all the other things. But I also think about high turnover, right? People leaving the organization because they have a negative impact or missed opportunities. But I want to do a pulse check, so you can let us know how you are landing with this information that we're sharing with you. Which areas or area do you see as most urgent to upskill in over the next 6 to 12 months? So in the next 6 to 12 months, we have a poll question asking you which one of these areas, they are cloud skills, they are AI and machine learning literacy, they are DevOps and automation, cybersecurity and compliance, or maybe you're just not sure and you are evaluating all the needs. So let's go ahead and take a few seconds. I'm going to give you 5 more seconds to give us the answers. We're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go ahead and end the poll. Let's see what our results are. And it looks like we have a winner. AI and machine learning literacy is taking charge here, right? So thank you all so much for weighing in. It is no surprise that AI is top of mind because right now things are moving fast. We need to stay ahead and we need to be intentional about how we are training. So let's talk about what it really takes to build a future ready team. Now, Mark, walk us through what a prepared IT workforce looks like today.
Sure. So a big part of this is having the plan and the tools ready to go for a true employee development plan. And there's really 4 different parts to go into that employee development plan as you go through. First one is, of course, having SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. We're all used to seeing that term, and knowing what success looks like for your employee development plan. What skills do you need to have updated? What do you need to see? What's that change that you need to see in the behavior so you know whether your plan is successful or not? The second part is having good learning resources. And that's where we have such a great partnership with OpenSesame to have those curated resources with courses, but then also using other resources to enhance that content that's there. You've got your base. So then having mentorship, having on-the-job training, having different industry certification programs, having employee groups where they can resource share, all of those different types of resources that give you the diversity, not only to get the knowledge out there, but then to reinforce it and apply it and get beyond just the forgetting curve of I completed a course, great, check the box, and I'm done. So then you have feedback systems as your third part, making sure you know that feedback of reviews, peer evaluations, 360 input, so you can see that the information is being applied, but also getting that continual feedback that it's not just the knowledge, it's that they're successfully putting it out there. And then finally, it's about having milestone tracking and knowing what the different goals are and what the milestones are to get there. Putting out a large goal of we're going to be experts in cybersecurity is overwhelming. So make sure that you break it down into smaller goals that are attainable and can keep that motivation level up and visible, of course, so they know where they are along the way. There's also a number of barriers that occur, particularly in the IT space, when you get into the actual development of employees. First one is lack of time, and that's constant to everyone. I mentioned that earlier for some of the challenges that we always face. It's that priority being placed on learning and development, and that's a constant battle. So if you don't have the opportunity to develop skills, you don't upskill the workforce and you start to fall behind. So it's finding ways to come up and reduce that risk and reduce that barrier. The second is expectations. Yeah, there's that culture of leadership within a company to be able to create that learning first culture so you are able to actually go out and do it. If no one's following up, no one's giving assignments, no one is following up on it, there's no benefit to an employee to do it. So people won't do it on their own. And then the final is the lack of value. And that is always a challenge of, is that content up to date? Is it out of date? This is the same course that I took 6 years ago, and the software that I'm supporting is 10 versions ahead of that now. So it's always that challenge to keep content up to date, relevant to the job, and not have people spending their time going out and I'm not going to bother with training. I'm just going to go ask ChatGPT about it. So you have to always have that type of understanding and make sure it's there.
Oh my gosh.
True.
Can I just mention, sorry, Kyle, to cut you off, but I was just going to say, this sounds like the doom and gloom of literally every person, right? When we're going through learning is the situations of, you want me to do this and do my job. You want me to learn and do my job. And then this other thing happened. And then you said ChatGPT. And I'm like, no, don't ask this thing that hallucinates. It's going to lie to make me happy. Kyle, you were going to say something.
I was just saying that, yeah, this really resonated with me personally.
Definitely, I think it sounds familiar to all the things that we've been thinking about. And I know that as you were going through those options, Mark, you're really spot on. And I don't think anyone here in the session today is really questioning whether training matters. I think we all get it, that we have to be trained, or we have to get into some sort of a learning program or some sort of continuous learning environment, because the world is changing faster than we can be intentional about finding that learning, right? We have to be able to create learning paths in such a way where it's in the flow of work, right? And so I just kind of want to piece in this part that you talked about, which was the no time, the no clear expectations, right? That kind of feels like, well, if I don't have time to do it, but I have to do it, then I'm sort of disengaged. I probably have it in the background. Or if I don't feel like it's important, right? It's in the background. It's something that's not helping me. Mark, can you kind of pinpoint for us what we need to be doing in terms of moving people from being disengaged to engaged?
Sure. So we look at it really as 5 different aspects. So the first one is making it easy for everyone. So make it easy for your learners to get to the training that they need and to be able to complete it. So creating learning paths that bundle courses in a logical order. Give them a path that makes sense. And it's not one day I'm taking highly advanced and then the next course that I choose is random beginner stuff that bores me. Give it a logical flow. Make sure it's easy to take from their device. Make it mobile friendly and easy for them to get to wherever they are, regardless of their environment. And particularly as we're talking about technical training, giving the ability to test out is so important. That prescriptive learning approach and being able to say, you know what, this person has been programming for years, they get it, they don't need to take this course. The second part of it then is making it accountable. So giving out assignments where it's required so people know that this is something that they need to do, and give them goals that take it into account. So it can be performance reviews. It can just be an ongoing conversation depending on your business culture. Is this something that is a biannual review, or is this an every 2 weeks meeting with your manager where you're following up on that? And that's the other critical part. Follow up and monitoring. So having dashboards that can see where you are, having reminders that go out to people to be able to complete it. And then after that, it's all about making it relevant. And that's where we've always struggled. Keeping content current. Putting out content for a rapidly changing world is so difficult. So making sure that you have content that's constantly up to date and addressing the needs that are coming in today. being able to have that adaptive learning path is also so important. It's not just a one-size-fits-all approach. Someone who is supporting technology for a finance organization versus supporting technology for an HR organization, there's going to be some different needs. So find ways to make your learning paths more flexible to bring in some of those true business needs that go into it so they are able to get what they need to perform in their role and connect to their client better as you go through it. The next thing is looking at making it collaborative. So resource sharing and some of the social learning type platforms. So being able to share your own resources, best practices and tips through chats, through groups, through any type of employee development and engagement forum. So that can be through forums, other social media tools like news feeds, that sort of thing. And then also the ultimate challenge for an L&D perspective, giving up that control and letting IT create their own courses to go out there and getting the framework that allows them to use their technical expertise and put it into a learning friendly approach. So let's look at the ways that the LMS can help with that. So first thing is to make sure that you've got the connector there. And we'll talk through that here in just a second. But then also we offer our CYPHER agent for course creators to help IT collaborate on content, and then a CYPHER agent for learners to provide immediate, verified, and personal access to answers. So let's go ahead and jump ahead here. And our fifth point from before, making it immediate, being able to give safe, verifiable answers, support exploration, so giving learners the ability to explore in different content, and providing instant tutoring and responses to them. So let's take a look at what that CYPHER and OpenSesame connector looks like to be able to pull in that content and keep it relevant. So you can see on your screen an example of our platform and how OpenSesame is pulled into that content. So all of your content from OpenSesame subscription is kept up to date and accurate as you go through to get that best in class content that OpenSesame offers. Kyle, can you walk us through a little bit of the OpenSesame content side of things?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. It's really cool to see how our content kind of fully fleshes out inside your platform. It's awesome stuff. So here we're looking at the whole world of, and not even an extensive list of publishers that exist inside of the OpenSesame marketplace. And over time, we've been able to bring in quite a few publishers, and now there's over 100. So the point I want to make is that quality publishers are really the most important thing, and highlighting what Mark said, right? Like, you need to make sure that the content that you're putting out to your learners is up to date. And there has to be systems in place for that. And you need to be ideally working with us well-established e-learning publishing companies that are right on top of things as they need to be. So threats always change, and so are publishers and the content that they're providing us. So publishers, a lot of them are focused on really specific security topics that they themselves are experts on. And just one little example that I want to give here, I support a publisher named Global Learning Systems, and every year they do a big update to their flagship cybersecurity course that contains all the topics. And the way that it works on our platform is that they keep things consistent enough where we can do a drop-in replacement every year to 9 months when that happens, so that for learners in CYPHER and any OpenSesame customer, the next time they launch that course, without anyone doing anything, they're going to see the recent updated version. So yeah, stale content must be avoided, and that's what having a thriving publisher network and OpenSesame's marketplace gets you. We just want to quickly highlight that our catalog goes deeper than video content. We also include things like audio, podcast, book summaries, VR, rich media animations, and even thought pieces from TED and other publishers like them.
And Kyle, I just want to mention that, part of what you were sharing is about curating, right? Like we're talking about sort of like AI came up as the number one, right? We're trying to boost engagement by meeting people where they're at. And so just talk to us a little bit, I think, for me, about why this connection is important. Because we have our partners, CYPHER Learning, and then we have OpenSesame. So like these learning path examples, right? What does the connector mean? What are we doing on our end to make sure that the connection makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So what the connector does is makes it very simple for you to take a list that's already built inside of OpenSesame Marketplace, and a list will contain multiple courses from the multiple publishers that I just showed you. So you can put in a curation request as a customer and say, I need these exact topics, but you can, and then we'll produce that for you, but you can also go and find lists that have been pre-built. So recently I put together some AI lists that get at lots of different aspects of AI learning. One of them being AI, for everyone, like so some micro learning. If your company needs help implementing and adopting AI, there's a whole list that covers those topics, as well as the ever popular governance topics. So that's one of the advantages that you get, that these lists are already pre-built. You basically just find them and then click deliver, and then it shows up in CYPHER, and then you can start putting those in paths and assigning them out to learners. Same goes with, I know there's been a lot of talk about AI, and in the poll it said that AI was the most popular, but if we're building AI things and running AI things, especially custom stuff, like those are going to be workflows that all happen inside of public cloud providers, and a lot of that's happening inside of AWS. So I also want to highlight the pre-built list that will help any team get their learners up to speed on AWS, depending on where the current skills are at. And these, again, are already built out, ready to go. And if you wanted to have something mixed in a particular way, you can do a custom curation request as well. That'll come to me.
Right. So the second part of things that we looked at was making it collaborative. And that was that always challenge of letting go and letting IT create their own courses. So one of the ways that we enable that at CYPHER is through our CYPHER Agent for course creators, our AI course generation that is able to generate a full course from a document or whatever it may be, and give 80% of the work taken care of and put it into a learning format, and then just require some review. And in these situations, that's very valuable. OpenSesame has such great course content that will give you the basics, but then it's always about making it relevant to them and being able to then take a policy document, for example. So if you are training your staff on AWS and how to administer AWS, OpenSesame has great content on those types of topics, but maybe your team has some very specific policies that they want to add to that. Great, you create a learning path that includes your OpenSesame content and then an additional short module that comes in at the end. Provide that policy document and let CYPHER Agent create the course for you and package it together so it gives the context to the learner from what that may be. From there, we then take it to making it immediate. And that's where CYPHER Agent for Learners comes in. CYPHER Agent for Learners is our informal learning tool that provides guide rails based on your environment and your documentation. So you're able to then create on-demand, short, basically courses with a concept map and general topic based on your policy documents, everything else that is in your system, and be able to answer questions in real time to your learners as you go through.
That's really great, Mark. Just to interrupt for a second, I can see the example you're showing is Civil 3D, which is like an advanced property architecture application. So we have courses on Civil 3D that could be paired, with this. So that's great to see.
Yeah, and it's definitely things that I would have no idea, so I would rely on that topic very heavily to be able to get through there. So Kyle, do you want to share some of the resources that we have?
Absolutely. Um, Again, so these are some resources, some takeaways from the webinar today. The skills learning path sheet helps you um, evaluate, what your needs are and, where you're at currently. So I think you'll find that really useful. As well as the AWS training role guide by role. So those will give you the pre-built AWS list that I put together, depending on which skill level you're targeting. Yeah, please check those out.
I want to just pause here for a second and just mention that, okay, first of all, y'all have given us so much information, but also I feel like all the challenges, which is making it easy. I think Mark, you were talking about making it make sense to us, right? Making it relevant, right? Making it make sense to my role. What am I doing? And then definitely want to reiterate here that some of the information that we're sharing has to do with how can you do this quickly because the world is changing so fast, right? So making it immediate. And so just landing on that, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how is a company going to take what they know as their IT needs, right? You talked about these data breaches. You talked about the issues that could happen if you don't have the right skills in place. What do they actually need aside from these toolkits we're sharing? What support do they need in understanding what their personal needs are? And maybe Kyle, I know that you work on strategic calls with our customers. Can you just share a little bit about what that looks like in terms of not only personalizing these resources, right? Because these resources are generic, but how can we personalize them for our customers?
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with bringing the SMEs, the subject matter experts from the different departments into the conversation with the owners of the learning platforms, right? So we can really understand. In the case where customers might be coming from a different learning system, one of the things we can do is effectively like take the list of titles that are mostly used on the platform and then provide multiple equivalents inside of the OpenSesame marketplace. So really, it's up to you to say, I would like courses that are just this link that always include post assessments, that don't include this style of training. All of those preferences can be gathered and sent to us as we put together custom learning paths for you, in addition to all of the pre-built playlist that can be found just by searching through our catalog.
And I think we have more gifts for everybody, right? We have one more area with curated lists that you've probably created, right?
That's right. Yeah. So these are the links to the list that we mentioned earlier. You can QR code those, or you can also find the links in the chat that Heidi put in there. But yeah, definitely check out the AI for Everyone list. I'm sure you'll find a list in there that'll resonate with your teams and kind of where you're at on your AI journey and who's asking for what level of content.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Y'all, hopefully this was helpful for you. This information hopefully was helpful to you learning more about how you can not only empower your teams to learn more, but also how you can do it right, how you can make sure that you're meeting them where they're at, and then spending time on making sure that you're making their time count towards real professional development for their learning. So if you have any questions for our speakers today, please put them in the Q&A or put them in the chat so we can go ahead and answer them. But we are going to be issuing you your HRCI, your SHRM, and your ATD codes for recertification for our session today. We're so excited that you're going to be earning one HR and SHRM and ATD recertification credit hour for our session today. And one of the questions that we did get from one of our speakers is, from one of our participants is about whether, it's actually a fun question. It's whether cyber attacks are more dangerous or are undertrained IT teams more dangerous? So I don't know which one of y'all wants to take that question on, but what's more dangerous, a cyber attack or an undertrained IT teams? Maybe this is flipping the conversation, but I'm curious.
That's a great question. I'm gonna have to go with undertrained teams. If you've got an IT team that is skilled, they can fend off an attack so easily and so well. But if you've got a team that doesn't even know what they're looking for, that just opens you up and you're not able to even anticipate the attacks. So I would go with the undertrained IT team.
Love it.
Yeah,
You,
that's
Kyle.
right. Yeah, I feel like that's definitely the right answer because the attacks are a given. The attacks are always happening. It's not something you really have control over. Um, and if, perhaps the answer is the other way around. If you're an extremely high profile company, um, with something very sensitive, right? I think in that situation, but there are a lot of common sense things that are really important for IT teams to understand. I think like we've always had security awareness training for end users, and a lot of companies will make that, short but frequent, 5 to 10 minute micro learnings that get rolled out. And what I'm starting to see, right, is that we have a IT department, engineering department version of that kind of learning, right? Where a micro learning for an engineering team might be 30 minutes at the shortest and 40 or 4 hours at the longest, but an hour typical, right? So we've got publishers now that are actually coming in and saying, hey, here's an hour long quick hit thing that's just going to go point by point by point, some of the very most obvious things that you need to be aware of as a developer. So yeah, I think the training is really the key there, but I don't know. Hackers are kind of scary too. Seems like they can do whatever they want if they're motivated.
It is really scary. Oh, so go ahead, Mark.
No, absolutely. If they're motivated, they certainly can. And as we talk about it, that's also one of those areas, as we were talking about the prescriptive learning before, being able to quiz your team and being able to see where gaps are reemerging is also very important. So you can have content recommendations based on that.
Yeah. I do have another question. And so this question is really centered about how training can actually be a retention strategy, right? So I'm thinking to the headlines that have been kind of showing up in the news where like OpenAI has poached some top Google AI researchers with offers of millions of dollars, right? Just for joining the team, right? And Apple has actually also reported the same thing, giving their engineers annual packages. We can go on and on about how companies are trying to essentially hoard their talent as it comes to IT. So, can training actually be a retention strategy, right? Or is that just an HR thing? Tell me. And Kyle, this is your space, right? You're a top recruiter for IT talent.
That's right. I know, honestly, the first thing that came to mind when you brought the question up is, I spent over 15 years as an engineering recruiter and have lots of connections on LinkedIn, but that's what I honestly see the most of the engineering audience that I follow is they're talking about the certifications they're working on. And in a lot of cases, they've been doing this for 7 years, right? And they do it on their own. But recently I have seen the trend where it's like, not only am I doing this thing and getting another certification, but my company actually rolled this out to me. And that's partially why I'm going to stay here long term. And by the way, you should look at our openings because this is a really great place to work. But I think that is playing out, right? That it's not just here's some basic training, but if you really want to get a certification utilizing the years of experience you have, here you'll pay for it and also help you set for the exam as a company. So yeah, recent trend I've noticed.
Have you seen that also, Mark, on your end? Maybe in your company, but also in companies that you serve?
Absolutely not, and not just in companies I serve, but in companies I've worked for before. So I absolutely have seen that as a true benefit to be able to retain talent by investing in them. And that's, the key. An engaged employee not only is more beneficial and more educated, but is going to stay with you. And it's all about seeing that investment in you versus just checking the box and get through there.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I'm going to echo one of our participants mentioned. I'm not even in IT and I'm getting AWS certified this year. Yes, That is what we're looking for. You know, people don't want just perks. They want purpose, and they want to be able to progress not only in their lives, but in their careers, most importantly, because your career development plans are all about helping you retain top talent. This isn't just about people learning the things that they need to do their jobs. You want to retain them, give them the opportunity to upskill, reskill, and invest not only in your company, but also in themselves, right? So I want y'all to, in the chat, please give a waterfall of thank yous to all our speakers today. I want to thank you so much, Mark. Thank you, Kyle. Head over to opensesame.com, head over to CYPHER Learning to not only explore more webinars or more case studies or more toolkits. There is so much we could have shared, but if you visit the websites, you're going to get a lot more information there, because your journey to this cloud first success is really about connecting with the right partners. And I want to just take a moment to thank our amazing partners, CYPHER Learning, for being here with us and sharing very clearly about what the strategy is. The strategy is about being better together. Thank you all for joining us. And behind the scenes, I want to thank Heidi. I want to thank Alina. And I also want to thank Caitlin. I just want to make sure that you know that, we don't do things individually. And this is the same with the learning and development work that you're doing at your organization. You need a team, you need a partner behind you to make sure that they are helping you not only grow, but keep learning relevant. And also remember, your future ready workforce actually starts with them being skill ready. And we will see you next time. Thank you all for joining us. Bye.